You're listening to the most authentic place in sports.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back here to the channel. I'm Sean Davis. Make sure you guys, if you're on the YouTube side, like and subscribe to the channel. If you're on X, make sure you guys follow us here on Twitter at Sean_DAVI and follow my guy Muhammad at MCFXZ. Muhammad, my guy, welcome back. Excited for part 3 of our top 25 under 25 series. How you doing, bro? And yeah, looking forward to it.
Doing great, man. Like I said, great day of football, great day of hoop talks that just await us right now. But yeah, I'm super excited. Like we've mentioned in the previous episodes, a lot of great players are mentioning, but I think this crop right here is going to be probably arguably one of the most promising in the entire 25. So I'm super excited to get a chance to dive right in.
Yes, sir. Jello says hi. Jello, hope you had a great day hopping in here. Mama, do you have a football team? Do you have a favorite football team?
I'd say the Vikings.
Vikings. Oh, okay. So you guys had a great day today.
Calm little dub over the San Francisco 49ers. I think they're pretty food this year, so can't complain.
I had the Sunday night game on in the background with no volume, obviously, and CJ Stroud is just insane.
It's just insane. I'm telling you, that team, it's gonna be a problem.
Yeah. They're a fun team. My team, the Chargers, we got the dub today, but my pockets did not get a W today. Thank you, Kansas City Chief referees. I'm sorry, NFL referees. For
can't tell the difference.
That
Have you
call
seen both
there.
of the same room? Oh, you're talking about the penalty on, was it KC or the penalty on Cincinnati?
Since the PI with the fourth and a billion, yeah.
That's that.
So okay. So the funny story. I'm at a we're doing a workout or whatever, and one of my players says, "Yo, coach, come look at this, man. Bengals getting cheated." I'm like, "What? No, they're not." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah." It's mid workout, just stopped everything. So yeah, that was fun.
I'm dead, bro. Those games are always battles, but you know what happens.
Yeah. It's always coming down to the last play, literally.
I'm like, okay, he got the pass to play before. They get a little penalty. Now it's 4th and 15. Still walks them down. I mean, that's just unreal, man.
All righty. So let's really quickly recap where we're at up to this point. If you guys are new, make sure you guys go check out parts 1 and 2. I think we've done a really, really good job of breaking down these guys and doing this series. We're adding some fun stuff today in this episode as well. So 25 through 11, I'm going to briefly kind of run through them all. Number 25, Denny Avdia. Number 24, Jay McDaniels. Number 23, Jalen Suggs. 22, Nimhard. 21, Derek Lively. 20, Jalen Green. 19, Keegan Murray. 18, Darius Garland. 17, Jalen Johnson. I would say, even though we did 25 through 18 as part 1, 17 through 11 as part 2, I would say kind of that first tier ends at Jalen Johnson. And then you have Ahmed Thompson at 16, Franz Wagner at 15, Brandon Miller at 14, LaMelo Ball at 13, Evan Mobley at 12, and then Alperen Sengun at 11. Any overarching thoughts and opinions on that group one more time before we dive in here with number 10?
I don't think I have any at the moment. I definitely remembered when we were talking about this group that, this group has a lot of great potential, but a good amount of things that are holding them back. And I feel like that's a lot more self-inflicted versus, team scenario. When you look at guys like Franz Wagner, I think how good of a player that he is. He showed this summer with Germany, and just a matter of, is he able to just be consistent, as an offensive guy and also continue to be impactful as a defender. Brandon Miller, so showing a lot of promise, basically stepping into that lead role, when LaMelo fell down, and just continue to just showcase the consistency as well, and also, take a leap as a playmaker. And speaking of playmakers, a guy like LaMelo, just him being on the court to even show that. So I think that's something that, we want to see more of. A guy like Evan Mobley, can we be able to basically be that next supplement next to Donovan Mitchell? Can he be that guy that can step up when it matters most? And he showed some brilliance of that in the playoffs, but I think entirely this season you would like to see a lot more, hopefully, with him, and just kind of continuing to be a really great shot blocker, just rim to turn, and then kind of making that same impact be felt on the offensive end. And obviously a guy like Sengun, that team had their best stretch without him in it. So I think you want to see, can him and Jalen Green really coexist? And again, arguably your best player on that team. I think he's going to have another great breakout and just another leap that he's going to take. It's just a matter of if he's there to see it, and also just the defense, really. If this team really has any serious playoff aspirations, I just really need to see what he can do on the defensive end. And, can he, I'd probably say, diversify his offensive game. I think he's just so, not one-dimensional, but capped at what he's doing. So there's a lot to group, but a lot that's left desired. But again, this group has a lot of potential. The one we're going to talk about is probably, if not some of the best potential that they've already shown or what's to come. So I'm super excited.
Yeah. All right. Number 10. So this is like we've said throughout the series, a combined list. And we kind of like average up the scores, if you will, of our list. Number 10 is kind of in this top 10. If you want to say because of me, sure, I did have him higher on my list. I had this play number 9. You had him at number 13. That's actually how these next couple of guys are going to be, I think. But number 10, Jalen Williams, J-Dub. He is flat out a unreal pull-up jump shooter.
Yeah.
19 points per game, 14 boards, 4.5 assists, a little over a steal, 0.6 blocks per game, shooting 42.7%, 8.4% from the line, 62.1% true shooting percentage. I got to pull up this graphic from our friends over at Dunks and Threes that they were able to, put together. So this is kind of the graphic, right? This is all right. Here we go. NBA University put out this tweet: top 5 players in the last 5 years pull up a field goal, effective field goal percentage. I don't know what I was about to say. Obviously, you have CJ McCollum. You're going to see some pretty familiar faces. But look at that guy there at number 2. Jalen Williams, 55.6% effective field goal percentage on pull-up jumpers last season. He was incredible on pull-up attempts. Legit two-way star. Like it almost gets overlooked how good he is defensively because they have guys on this team that are a little bit more known for the defense, like Lou Dort. Alex Caruso's now there. Chet Holmgren gets a lot of praise for how good he is defensively, and rightfully so. And he's a 3-level scorer. He's a great driver of the basketball. Developing playmaker. I don't know how much I trust the playmaking as of right now, but he's fine. Mamba, where are you at with J-Dub?
I think where I ranked him at doesn't really speak to how much I love him as a player. I think 13 in theory is a little too low because he is a exceptional player, and I think him being an OKC alongside SGA and Chet sometimes takes away from his brilliance of how really good he is as a player. And I think, again, going back to that NBA University tweet about him being an effective pull-up shooter, I think I already mentioned this, that when I'm looking at that entire list, I think him being number 2 this season was probably the most impressive thing, considering how much downhill pressure he generates. And, with that, he's able to just make defenders have to concede his pull-up jump shot because of, his ability to get to the rim so well that they just have no chance at staying in front of him. And he just keeps defenses guessing so much. So with that, he's just able to be so effective as a shooter and ultimately one of the best pull-up scorers in the league. And, when you see that, it plays basically on all 3 levels as you see it with a 3-level scoring tag. Again, 19 points. I think this guy could be a legit sub low-end 20-point per game scorer in this league. And I think that's what's to come for this season. That's really the potential that he could hit. I think he could be a 21 to 22 point per game scorer where, now this team, being number one in the West this past season. I think they're getting a lot more acclimated and used to each other. Chet being able to get his first proper year under his belt, and SG basically having an MVP caliber season. He is going to be that consistent second to third option on that team, and I think he is going to be ultimately the X factor on most nights, where he's just going to show how important he is as not just a scorer, but just an overall like feel guy and impact player on both ends. So I really, really love Jay Will as a player. And, I think there's so much to like. Again, I think something that goes really underrated is just his ability to be a really good connector and defensive upside. I think those two things go really unnoticed in terms of, just the pull-up shooting and the three-point scoring. But he is just a perfect complement to a guy like SGA and Chet. And I really am excited to see what this kind of core looks to do, not just in the West, but just overall in the NBA for the future to come.
So do you think, I think last season, J-Dub was like the real number 2 option in OKC. Mm-hmm. In the long term, who do you think the number 2 option is? Do you think the number 2 option eventually becomes like a Chet, or do you think it's going to kind of stay J-Dub?
I think for the immediate moment, it's J-Dub, but I think eventually it could become Chet, given like I see the same kind of scoring upside projection with a guy like Chet. I think he's just playing alongside a literal 30-point per game scorer that just generates so much gravity. But I think once Chet, because I really do believe that Chet has the upside to be a really like effective three-level scorer, and he can actually surprisingly move so fluidly and so well at his size, like as a footer. And he puts the ball down extremely well. I think he's like in one of the best percentiles of like guys that are able to put the ball down on the ground. So I think he could become that. I just think J-Dub has shown more in less time, where he can actually just slot right in and be that connective guy. And there's been plenty of performances this year with J-Dub where he's like, give me the ball, I will make something happen. And I think Chet is still a ways from that, but I think his impact defensively is a reason as to why he's not able to be that effective on the offensive end, because how much energy he's conserving and how much he's just that much of a focal point on that end. But I think eventually, I think he could become a number 2 option. I just think for right now, that's J-Dub, but I don't think it's going to be like here to go for any while soon.
What are we looking for from J-Dub from an improvement standpoint, like heading into year 3? Like, is there a significant it's tough, right? Because he's never in OKC going to see the volume that it would he would need to see, I think, to be able to fully judge him.
Yeah, alongside
Right. Whereas I have a stronger opinion, for example, on a Cade who's on this list, and that's not like a spoiler, it's in the thumbnail. But I have a stronger opinion on Cade as an offensive player than I do a J-Dub, and that's purely we see Cade shoot the ball every time because of the situation, things like that. So is there any glaring thing that you think with J-Dub heading into next season? You're we need to see this from heading into year 3.
I just think the consistency on the jump shooting, I think that was something that kind of took place in the Dallas series where, the only thing that really was a constant on the offensive end was SGA. And there was times where, J-Dub really fell flat as a jump shooter, especially, being parked up on the wing or on the corner. And so I think just the consistency in terms of the shooting, it's not anything that I'm glaring or concerned over. It's just a matter of I just want to see improved jump shooting, because again, for how good of a pull-up scorer he is and how much gravity that SGA warrants, you would assume that that's something that he will benefit off of. But specific to that series, I think there were times in the fourth quarter and third quarter where he just fell flat as a scorer and really didn't take his lead into the game and was kind of putting a stamp on other teams. But again, I think that's one of those things where heading into year 3, he's really going to just get way more comfortable in his role as a secondary ball handler guy in that role, being able to just kind of complement SGA. And I think that's one of those things where I don't think there's a one singular thing, because again, he does so many things good. He's a great defender, obviously able to score on all levels, be a really great connector. He can rebound well. I think it's just a matter of, and relative to size, but I think it's just that if he's able to just kind of be consistent as a jump shooter and offer himself more off the ball, he'll be I think that's where he kind of takes his next ascension in his game. What do you think?
I think I'm with you, especially with the point like the consistency. Why is somebody like bringing up Cam Thomas? Oh, that's a Nets fan. Cam Thomas was a consideration for the series, not for the top 10, which is the part where we are in right now. Like you say, he did at times just disappear in the playoffs in that series. And again, like you said, the consistency and being just like, I don't think is J-Dub one of the 3 best like true number 2 options in the league? My answer would be no.
I don't think so. I think it's premature.
Right. Okay, let's say 5 then, because like by true number 2s, not like a number 2 masking it, like a 1 masking it as a 2, or like because of the situation he's at. Like, okay, is Devin Booker is there? Or I mean, either one. You know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
I think the point of like number 1's fate, like masking as a number 2. Like, would you consider, like, for example, do you think like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, you know what I mean? Like, I think those are both number 1 options, but they concede to each other on any given night. Whereas I think the dynamic in OKC, they all concede to SGA, but there are times you can step up as a number 2 option. If you're talking about top 5, I think that could be. I think he's more 4-5 than, like you mentioned, with top 3. Yeah, I think he could be. I honestly think he could be. I don't know. There was just some talk. I remember this past season where he had that stretch where he was just playing so well. And I can't remember who it was that tweeted about this, but they're just saying like J-Dub is a top 20 to 25 player. And everybody was so quick to agree. But then when he didn't have that performances that, matched up in the playoffs, everybody just came at the guy and his quotes. And I think it's just too premature to say he's at that level, but for him to even get that shout just shows you where his potential could lie, especially this upcoming season. I think he could prove himself there, but I just think the guys that are ahead of him are just a lot more proven as scorers, as two-way guys, and I think their situation is a lot more clear. Like, again, I would say J-Dub is the number 2 right now, but is that the definitive case for the future? Maybe not, because, you still do have a guy like Chet in the mix. They have an extremely deep team, with a lot of 3-and-D guys and just guys that can score as complementary guys or off ball, on that team, that he might not even be able to showcase his full repertoire, especially again alongside a guy like SGA. I think I just have to mention that because SGA is just going to consume so much of that offense and usage that like J-Dub on a different team, maybe being a more lead or number 2 option would probably blossom more. But I think he benefits more in the situation because he has a set in stone lead guy next to him. So I think that's really what's to come. I think if he's able to, like I said, improve the jump shooting, I think I'd be way more confident in him as like one of the better number 2 options in the league. Like I said, maybe pushing top 3, who knows? But I think he's in that conversation of like 4 or 5. So,
all right, as the number 2, Kyrie or J-Dub? We're taking Kyrie.
I'm taking Kyrie.
Okay. Number 2s. Again, that's kind of hard, actually.
You consider AD, Braun, like, who do you think that dynamic is? Are they both number 1s in their own rights?
I think they're both 1s, although this is going to sound really, really weird, but this is partially me projecting. I think Braun's going to be the number 2. But again, like that's more of he's really a 1 that's just playing number 2 next year, I think. And that's because he's 40. We're going to be 40.
I think of the proper number 2s.
Maxey. I think Maxey's a 2 right now. I think I'm taking Maxey. Yeah. I'm rolling through the teams in my head at least.
Yes, Morphle, Nets fan. I'm trying to think. Because you know what it is? It's a caveat that they're not 1s that are masked as 2s. Because if that was the case, that would open up like so much more convo. But okay, what about this? A Paul George better than a Paul George? I've seen that.
Not right now.
Yeah,
but like by the end of the year, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so like Miami situation. Is Jimmy and Bam, are they both ones, or like are they arguably both twos until playoff?
I think they're. I don't think there's like again, a number one on a team doesn't necessarily mean a number one, because I don't think anybody's a one on that team. But I think they have a handful of like twos, threes, like Hero whenever he's a serious player. Bam. I would still take J-Dub over any guy there not named Jimmy. But again, Jimmy's just, he doesn't really play like that this past season. So who knows? But I would take Jimmy over. Yeah, it's tight. I'm not gonna lie. It's just tough because we're not even talking about like other teams where, okay, would you take a Desmond Bane over?
I was gonna say either Desmond Bane or like Jaren. So
who would you take? I probably would take J-Dub. But again, it's like
close.
I just feel like J-Dub is more capped as a player, so we haven't even seen his full potential. So that's why I'm hoping that that's up. Like, what's to come this season? I probably would take him over a guy like Jaren Jackson or Desmond Bane. But again, it's pretty steep. I'm trying to think.
Last one, and this might be disrespectful. Cat. That might be disrespectful.
That just tells you Cat stocks at the moment, but I would take Cat. I would take Cat definitely. But
okay.
Again, I think the most important thing is that he's even being mentioned.
He's in that conversation.
He's in that convo. So, and again, I don't think he's as clear and cut as a number two. With again, like I said, SGA, Chet, other guys taking a little off his plate. So maybe come end of the season, if we look back at some of these names, he could genuinely be better than some of these names come end of next season. If he does have like a 22, 21 point per game year. And continue to do it on good efficiency, low usage. So again, I'm super, All
right, number 9, Scotty Barnes. Got to talk about him a ton in my power rankings episode of my 26th ranked. I think that's right. No, 25th ranked. 25th ranked.
Yeah.
I don't even remember my own teams. 25th ranked Toronto Raptors. Go check that episode out. My power ranking series. Almost 20 points per game last season, 8.2 boards, 6 assists, over a steal and over a block per game. 47.5% shooting splits, 34% from three, 78% from the line, 56.9% true shooting percentage. He is the next kind of wave of point forwards in the league. He had a career offensive season. He was spectacular. I think we kind of were having a discussion on it was with, I want to say, was it Jalen Green or it was somebody else, but like I think it was you and me that we were talking about, like, with NBA players, you want to like really, really see that sign of, oh, okay, like we can really, really build around him, or he's special or whatever by the end of that third season. If it's not really clicking by that third season, then you can start to panic and get a little worried. Scotty had a red hot rookie season, obviously. The Raptors organizationally was a hot mess. Didn't know what they wanted to do. Didn't know if they wanted to put all their chips in the middle of the table and go all in with that team with Fred and Gary and OG and Pascal or whatever. And honestly, that kind of stunted his development a bit, in my opinion. So he had a sophomore slump. To a certain extent, like there were still stretches of brilliance in there, but I would consider it a sophomore slump. And then this season, he was phenomenal. Really, really blossoming as an on-ball scorer and creator. Great playmaker. And defensively, I put great instincts defensively. Although, really, I think he's just good at just about everything defensively. I think he's at his best when he gets to roam and be kind of like a free safety, but he can guard the opposing team's best wing. He can, like, there'll be times where they'll even like have him guard the big and use him as a switch guy and switch on the perimeter and guard against quicker guards, or he'll help on the far side corner, like I said, play free safety and protect the rim even in some cases. So Scotty is awesome. Well-deserved the contract. One small note, I would really, really appreciate it if for Scotty that he doesn't get passive. I think there was a point like after they got, Quickly and RJ where he kind of deferred a little too much. Great, like get get teammate morale up. These are guys that you're just bringing in, but at the same time, like, you're Scotty Barnes, like, be aggressive and keep searching for your shot. The 3-point game is still developing, and I mean, it's 34%. I don't think anybody ever expected it to get to this point, so it's still improving, and Scotty's awesome. Number 9.
Definitely. I mean, he's one of my favorite young players in the league. I think it's so important to emphasize that, like your trajectory as a player is never linear, right? Like, again, this guy, red hot, he had a special rookie year. And, I think heading into year 2, obviously with the way that organization was being ran, it was just very confusing top to bottom. And I think, that kind of affected him year 2, and he kind of had slumps basically in all his metrics in terms of his field goal, shooting, points, rebounds, assists. And then heading into year 3, I think that's, like you said, he really had his career offensive season where he basically was just impactful. Literally on both ends. I think he was one of the only players this past season that was in the 80th percentile on both offensive and defensive EPM. So he is a player that just gets stuff done on both ends on a nightly basis. And something that I really pride Scotty on is, like you mentioned, when it comes to him developing as an on-ball guy, I don't want him to shy away from those on-ball reps. And I think him being passive doesn't help him at all, because again, when he does have the ball in his hands, he just generates so much focus, and that's something that you kind of worry sometimes in certain point forward guys, where when they do have that ball in the hands, what can they do outside of the scoring, right? What are they able to manipulate defenses and kind of make them manipulate themselves in terms of getting them to shift? He's already a great driver at the rim, able to generate a shot at the mid-range. He's definitely shown major strides at the 3-point line this past season, like you mentioned, 34% from the line. So he's definitely taken strides as a 3-level scorer, and there are still rooms for improvement for him. But he's just been so good when he's in his mode that I actually don't want him to shy away, and I think he can eventually progress to that lead option consistently on a nightly basis in Toronto. Where now that you've added a guy like Quickly, where you do see the upside in him as a scoring guard. RJ Barrett showed a lot of promise this past season for Team Canada, where he had really great kind of campaign once he got traded to the Raptors. In terms of his statistics, he basically was better in every category compared to when he was on the Knicks. So I think this Toronto team has pieces, and obviously this team is going to be at the helm of a guy like Scotty Barnes. So for him, obviously the offense there's a lot to love, but I think defensively that's what I probably love the most in terms of his instincts, like you mentioned. This guy has some of the most special timing and just kind of accuracy in terms of as a closeout guy and just being a disruptor in the paint. He just, again, his length helps him obviously with that, super good mover in space. So he does not hesitate, whether that's on the perimeter, deterring shooters, and just blocking away 3-point attempts, being able to be a really great weak side rim protector, and just kind of being a guy that just gets in lanes. He's stolen so many passes, as you mentioned, 1.3 steals a game. He had so many deflections. He is a guy that is just, again, so impactful on both ends. And I mean, year 4, what's to come? I mean, there's a lot to come. I think for him, he could put a serious all-star campaign as one of the best point forwards in the league. So I think there's so much promise with him. And I think he'll be the reason why you want to see Toronto head into the right direction heading into the season. So I'm super excited for a guy like him. I think they have some good pieces, interesting draft picks with, a guy like Jacoby Walter, another scoring guard that they can add next to alongside a guy like Quickly, Jonathan Mogbo. So interesting picks. I think with him, he's just going to be the lead guy in that front court. So I'm super excited to see how his year 4 pans out. But I mean, so much to love with a guy like Scotty, and what's to come.
Yeah, I am incredibly high on Scotty Barnes. He is really one of my favorite players in the league. I'm not the biggest fan of their jerseys. Otherwise, I would probably own a Scotty Barnes jersey right now. Same with our next player on the list. The next player, he probably has it worse when it comes to jersey selection. But he had a great year. I think Darko Rajakovic, the Raptors coach, I think he does a pretty decent job of utilizing Scotty, and I'm excited for Scotty's year 4. Has great size. Really. Now the thing is, and this was the point I made in that Raptors Power Rankings episode. And it was that I think this season's a big year for Scotty in terms of us figuring. Scotty got paid, so at the end of the day, it really does. He's set. But it's a big year because I think this is the year we can kind of see, as long as he's able to stay healthy. Can Scotty Barnes be going back to that number 1, number 2 conversation, right? Can Scotty be the number 1 on 8? Can he be the Kawhi Leonard for the Raptors? Yeah. Or is he Lauri Markkanen, the poster child of number 2 options in the league in an ideal scenario, right? I think right now, like on a title team, he's probably a number 2 still, which is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong being a number 2 necessarily. Like every championship team needs a number 2. But for his growth in there's like if Scotty turns into like a number, or like you start to see consistent flashes of even if it's year 5, like he's a top 10 player or whatever, and it's not this year, but like you can see consistent flashes of he could be a real number 1. Then this kind of retool, because I think that's what the Raptors would call it. I don't think they would call a full-fledged rebuild. This retool in Toronto is a lot easier if Scotty's a guy, right? And he is if he's the guy. So it's gonna be a big year.
I think he's a guy. That's what we want to see, if he's going to become the guy. And I think that's where you've seen different players step up into that in the Raptors organization, whether it was Kawhi at one point, whether it was Pascal Siakam at one point, where when you see guys get that keys given to them in the offense, that they usually progress the next year. And I think that was something that we seen in a guy like Pascal Siakam, where he was steadily making improvements to his game. It might have not been linear at first, but eventually once he hit like year 4 or 5, and he just was set, he just flew. And I think that's kind of the same position that I look at Scotty, where he's basically set the building blocks in terms of him to be successful as a player. I love what I'm seeing so far on both ends of the floor. Can he just take those on-ball scoring tendencies and kind of elevate them and do it on a consistently basis? So I think if he can do that, that's where I do want to be able to see him as a number 1 option specific to this team. So I think he is writing kind of the checks that you want to see him for this upcoming season. And hopefully year 5, year 6, he is in those top 10, 15 conversations comfortably. Because again, he's already one of the most impactful players on both ends in the league. So it's really just the defense that is doing so well. And I think that's what you want to see to match on the offensive end. Can he be a player that can give you 20 to 25 on any given night, but also be able to be super locked in defensively and, be a menace everywhere. So, and also be a great connector. So that's really what you want to see. I think I look at a guy like Scotty, he can give me 20, but I don't think I can see 25 in the immediate future. But that's where if he can rewrite, how I'm thinking, I think this retool goes so much more faster. And, a team that has a lot of pieces, it makes much more sense to have somebody set in stone like him to build around, which it's a lot easier to build around him when you have guys in the front court and you do have a lot of individual wings that make sense, that can shoot the ball at a high level, score. It's really just complementing them around a guy like Scotty. So that's really what I just want to see this coming season.
All right. Still good. Good?
Yep. You good?
Yeah. All right, cool.
Let's get it.
My bad. Sorry about that. All right. Number 8. I had him, this guy, sixth on my list. You had him a little bit outside the top 10.
Mm-hmm.
Number 8, Cade Cunningham, an incredible offensive creator. I'm gonna let you do the star, then I'll jump in with Cade. What's your thoughts on Cade Cunningham?
Again, I think Cade Cunningham is a player that we know how special of a talent he is in Detroit, but I think we just know, given the scenario that he's been in, he's been playing in one of the worst situations for any player, like you mentioned on this list, or for any top guy in the league. But again, Cade Cunningham, year 3, 22.7 points per game, 4.3 rebounds, 7.5 assists, nearly a steal a game and half a block a game, on 44.9% field goal, on 35% shooting, 87 basically on free throw. And I think the caveat is the 55% true shooting. When you look at a guy like Cade, very high usage, low efficient player. And I think guys like that in the league, I feel very on the fence with, because again, I know the situation that Cade is in where he's basically being asked to initiate the offense and be everything for this team. And it's very tough at times where this team really doesn't have two to maybe even one competent shooter on the floor at a time outside of a guy like him. And it can get difficult at times for, the spacing of his team to just kind of be anything. And it kind of just makes it his job harder, where he's not really able to get the 3 points flowing in his game. And then he's pretty much just kenning at the rim a lot. I think he was one of the most blocked players this past season, where he's just getting to the rim so much because I think just the spacing on this floor is just so bad. But I think a guy like him, something that I'm going to give him grace for is there's so much to like about Cade. Once you see the 3-point attempts falling, I think he is a very different player once you actually do have shooting around him. And I think that was something that, I was hoping to see in the draft this upcoming season at the 5th pick, where they did pick a guy like Ron Holland, where, another exceptional slasher, one of the best advantage players in the draft. So it's going to be really interesting to see how he pairs alongside guys like him, Asar, with this new pickup of a guy like Tobias Harris. That's going to be some really good shooting that they can also add in the front court and kind of wing position. So again, Cade is a special player. I think, like we've mentioned, incredible PNR hub and just a really underrated playmaker. He is able to make everything work in Detroit, but unfortunately it's just not enough to get the ball rolling. But again, within the second half of the season, probably post All-Star, he looked way more engaged both on and off ball. So I think he's trending to a good upwards direction. It's really just how much can he do that he's basically not capped off at, respective to his team. If they can put shooters on the floor, and I think they're going to play with so much more pace, and I think that will allow him to be a lot more efficient, where, he does have runners in space and transition. He's able to get other guys going, like a Ron Hall, like an Asar, where, these aren't black holes as shooters on the court at the same time with you. So I think his potential this upcoming season will definitely go hand in hand with kind of what is around him to work with in terms of shooting and pacing. But just individually looking at Cade, again, there's so much to like in his game. But again, I think there is a lot left desired with the efficiency and just kind of not being the best when it comes to shooting at the rim. Again, not generating 3-point attempts as you would want to see. But, obviously, given being in the worst scenario of all time, you definitely want to see some grace given to him. But I think at some point you do want to see him make something happen in year 4. So again, I think I've gave him some leeway. Now it's just, what can we see be done with some improved team building? So now we just have to wait and see if he's able to put it all together. But again, trending upwards, in my opinion, so a lot to like with him.
So Cade Cunningham, he got the I'm making this up on the fly. He got the power rankings bump for me. Because I think right around the time we were making our list, maybe a little bit after, but right around the time we were making our list, I just did my Pistons episode, which means I just did like my deep dive, like watching a lot of Cade Cunningham film.
Yeah.
And I think with Cade, and I do not fault anybody with this, mind you. I want to get that clear. I'm not faulting anybody. Because again, it was just awful. Like I said, he played in the worst situation of any player on this list. By far, it's not even close. I don't think there's a lot of people that watch enough of Cade and like understand. I think there are people that think he's pretty good, but I think there's not a lot of people that like watch Cade because of how bad the Pistons are. And then you watch Cade and you're like, oh, I knew he was pretty good, but I was like, oh, okay, yeah. Like this guy, he's really good actually at some things. He has a very, very, very herky-jerky like style of play with his pace at times. Like he has
no burst. I think that's just obvious. Like his bursting, it's on bronze. His quick first step is on bronze, but I think he finds a way to get open, which is surprising with the he's just super unorthodox in his movement, but
it's very like SGA Brunson-esque. And I'm not saying he's those players. I'm saying like that one, because sometimes you hear that and it gets misaggregated to saying that he's on the level of those guys. No, like the way he operates is very similar to those
in
two
tight spaces
players.
Without the use of burst or speed on their side. Like I look at a guy like SGA, he plays at multiple paces, but he dictates his pace.
Yes.
He does not speed up his game regardless of who's in front of him. I think that's the same way I look at Cade and Brunson as kind of like offensive initiators. They are able to just swivel around in tight spaces and move very cleanly without, like I said, using a lot of speed or a lot of wasted movements. And I think that's the kind of perfect way to look at these guys.
Yeah. You will like for him to be more efficient with some of the shot selection. And I think, and I added that he's an underrated playmaker. I think that's true, but I do think he still has, some growing to do as a playmaker.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, it's, again, now we're actually adding him around with competent floor spacers like Malik Beasley, Tim Hardaway Jr., Tobias Harris in a vacuum are not sexy additions whatsoever.
Yeah.
But for this team, yes, the hell they are.
100%. And I think something that's really underrated that we haven't talked about is the hiring of Fred Vinson, the shooting coach. So where I really think that's going to do wonders for guys like Asar Thompson and Ron Holland, where maybe more on the Asar side where, he shot 14% this past season from 3-point, very dreadful as a shooter from the outside. But, you see the mechanics in theory, and now it's just a matter of putting pen to paper and kind of getting the repetition and working. And a guy like Ron Holland, where he's a guy that shoots better off the dribble than in catch and shoot situations. So at least that's a decent sign that he can do it in terms of on the ball creation. So having a guy like Fred Vinson that can just kind of improve the shooting as a whole for this team, and then going out in the market and getting guys for really good deals to pair alongside a guy like Cade Cunningham. Again, if you look at this team from a vacuum, they have some individual guys, I think guys like Jalen Duren is a very promising player with, being one of the better rebounders in the league. Basically
needs
just
to get a defensive anchor.
I think that is something that's very true because, again, for what Jalen Duren does with Cade Cunningham in terms of their two-man game, I think there's definitely a discussion that I was talking with somebody that if you look at player-to-player connections, I think Cade Cunningham to Jalen Duren is one of the highest or one of the best in the league in terms of field goal attempts, field goal made. So they're always connecting, especially as a lob, but he's always offering himself. But just, again, this team is just poorly constructed. They really don't have any consistent shooting on any level. It doesn't even matter just on the wings. I don't think they just have consistent shooters. I don't think they have any great front court play in terms of the defensive end. And offensively, they just don't have guys that can create for themselves or just stretch the floor. I think Jalen Duren is very restricted to just the paint as a lob threat, offering himself as just that, being a really great rebounder, though. And I look at Isaiah Stewart in the same manner, Marvin Bagley. I think this team is just oddly constructed. But, again, this team is filled with wings, so you just hope that some pan out. And they can also just find ways to get guys that can shoot the ball out on the court at the same time with a guy like Cade, given his playmaking ability. So this team, I legit have no expectation for this team. They were one of the worst teams. They literally had the worst losing stretch in the history of the NBA. So I do not give this team any grace in that manner because it's not like anything really changes this year. But I think marginally they will improve in terms of the kind of lineups they put out. And also the shooting on this team. But what that does succumb to, not really much in the East. But we'll see. I think if they can put some better shooters on the floor and kind of get some better continuity as a team, I think they will improve at pacing and kind of just their whole offensive flow. And I think Cade will be a reason as to why that's the case. And I think he'll put up his stats. I think he'll be very effective as a scorer. Efficient, maybe not. But, again, a lot to like with Cade. But he's definitely trending in an upwards trajectory that I want to see. So,
yeah. All right, where are we at? Number 7, I think.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep, because K was 8. Number 7, this is the first time in quite a while in this series, I think, that we've had a player that we both agree on the exact spot for where this guy ranks. We both had him 8th on our list, but because of, again, it's a combined list, 8th for us both having him 8th means he's 7th. Number 7, I don't know why I tried to explain it like that, made it even more confusing. Number 7, Tyrese Maxey. Again, and this is no disrespect to Tyrese Maxey. We had a great year, but Tyrese Maxey won the everybody predicted the breakout award. I don't think he should have won Most Improved. Maybe that's just like a bad argument because I mean, like if everybody predicted it, but it still happened, like that's not the correct argument I should have used. The real argument is like he made the jump from 21 points to 25.9, and the jump really came because of the volume because Harden wasn't there.
Yeah.
So again, it's everybody saw this coming, I think.
Yeah.
I don't think everybody saw some of the playoff bursts he had. And I think I never had a concern with like the playoff scoring because I think sometimes with what'd you say?
I don't think it was going to be like this though. That New York
I didn't
series,
think it was going to be like that.
He really put himself like I think that leap is like rising star to a legit potential at being a superstar. I think he really showed that. I think that New York series is like if you need to put a game or a set of games as a resume as to what he could do, watch that New York game. I mean, he willed his team at times when a guy like Joel Embiid couldn't. He was doing it with Joel Embiid 2v5 at times. He is just the real deal.
Yeah. I don't think he'll ever be able to crack the top 3, at least not anytime. Well, like he only has one more year being on this list to be back on the list next year, presumably.
Yeah.
I don't think he'll crack the top 3, but next year I would be stunned if he's not in the top 5. And maybe he's able to crack the top 3, but who knows? 25.9 points, 3.7 rebounds, 6.2 assists, a steal, half a block a game. He waited a year to take the money to take his big extension so that they could get Paul George and have the cap space to sign a Paul George.
Mm-hmm.
So kudos to Maxey for being an air quotes team player. He still got his bag or whatever, but he waited. And honestly, like I think it was only for the benefit of himself as well, right?
Yeah.
One of truly just the best scoring guards in the league in terms of the ability to from the point guard-ish position, right? To just put the ball in the basket. I mean, like, if we're not counting like the obvious ones, like a Steph or a Luka or we're considering SGA a point guard probably. So SGA. Outside of that, right? Like, I don't think you can name 3 other like guards that are like probably ones, right? That are just flat out better scorers of the basketball than Tyrese Maxey.
Luka, SGA, and then maybe Brunson.
Oh yeah, I forgot Brunson. It's like
I think those Steph in there. You could throw Steph in there. I think for what Tyrese Maxey does in terms of the on and off ball game,
sure,
I'd probably rate that higher than Steph. But again, Steph is Steph. I'm never not going to take away from him. But I think he just does so much, not just as a shooter, but also his in between game because of how great he is on the ball and his speed at getting downhill. Again, I think that was something that you really did get a chance to see in that New York series where, his rim efficiency was good, but you want to see it get better. And I think that's where, if he's able to develop a consistent pull-up or floater, he's going to be scary. I think, when you watch him, he's able to just break defenses down. And I think his
ability, right here.
Literally, like this is just hibachi right here. He's just getting downhill with ease, with his ability to just kind of break defenders down on the ball and his speed at getting to the rim. And again, that's something where he's definitely picked up so much with having him alongside a guy like Harden a year ago. And you're seeing it in full effect this past season when he kind of gets that full kind of responsibility to be that lead guard. And I think he's taken it very gracefully. And I think that's something where this upcoming season, he kind of probably pushes himself into that potential where if he could have an exceptional year, he could probably be in an all-NBA conversation. I think he has that potential to be a guy that, could average a 26, a 27 a game. Because again, I look at these other guys that we mentioned, Luka, SGA, Brunson, where these guys have very elite scoring propensities. And I look at a guy like Tyrese and he isn't far off, and I think he is, again, a lot younger than those 2 guys or all 3 guys. But also I think he has the biggest room for improvement in terms of just being more efficient. And he hasn't even tapped in to his game as a playmaker. And I think that's one of those things where
he's just getting started.
literally. And I think one of those things where it looks easy that you have a guy like Embiid next to you to basically just set the table for him and let him take care of the rest and everybody just works off of him. But I think now that you have these additions of a guy like Paul George, now you kind of add guys around the perimeter in terms of like Kyle Lowry, Eric Gordon, recently picking up Yabusele from France. I think they have a lot of shooters and wing guys that are able to complement the main three of him and PG and Embiid. I think that will be a great opportunity for him to kind of improve as a playmaker and kind of set the table for others, but also putting pressure on defenses as a lead scorer. So I think the potential for Maxi is at its highest, at least for the first couple of years, because he really is in a situation where he can kind of get the keys to the offense alongside a guy like Embiid. And then that allows a guy like PG to kind of sit back as kind of a second or maybe a third option at this point and kind of just coast. And that will definitely put a lot less pressure on Maxi to kind of get things going, compared to them having a guy like, Tobias Harris, where he's not maybe the same level scorer or kind of creator as a Paul George. So I think all these additions that they've made with Daryl Morey and kind of the cap space situation has all been things that will benefit Tyrese Maxey this upcoming season. So I think Philly is a team that is to be in serious thinking pieces with in the East. Obviously, I think they're still a tier below the guys like the Celtics and the Knicks. But I think when you look at teams like Indiana and Philly, I think they're right in that second tier conversation in the East.
At the top of that second tier.
Yeah.
I think it's them, Milwaukee, and Indiana. And then, depending on where you feel that with Orlando, I think Orlando's like top of that third tier that, all right, let's win a playoff series as kind of the expectation.
I think everybody's blossoming on Orlando that I don't think – it's not that I don't think that Paolo or Franz are definitives because they are. I think it's just a matter of those teams are so young that they're still like not fully set in stone, but they've made a name for themselves to where like, hey, if we get an all-NBA-esque season from Apollo, or if we get a really big leap from a guy like Franz, this could be this could be a second-round team. This could be a team that they could push from the top of the third tier into that back end of the second tier. So this is no disrespect to them. It's just that's really the levels of kind of gap in team building with, guys like you said, like Indiana, Milwaukee, Philly. I think those teams are all cutthroat better than the Orlando Magic. But it's one of those where on any given night, if they just play a random matchup, who knows that it could shift their way. So I think that's one of those things where in the East, it's going to be a gauntlet. I think that's something that we do have to give the East respect for. I think it's going to be a lot, hopefully, if they're healthy, the East should definitely make it a lot more interesting. So I would really like my bet at Tyrese Maxey becoming much better this season and just being consistent as a guy next year. So I really like Maxey, and I'm really excited for what's to come with him and with a lot better team building this upcoming year. So,
yeah, I look at the East. The East has the two worst teams in the league by far, in my opinion, in Brooklyn and Washington. But like 1 through 11, even though like the back half of the East is still worse than some of the back end of the West. But it is a deeper conference than it has been in a few years in the East. So there's some really, really quality teams.
Yeah, I think there'll be some interesting names that could be in that play-in mix that you probably wouldn't have considered. Like, again, we've mentioned this with the Hornets, where I really think this is a team that they're so contingent on if LaMelo stays healthy, if Brandon Miller continues to take the leaps and strides that he has, if Mark Williams stays healthy. That could be a team that could magically see themselves at the back end of a play-in. Who knows? Come March, come April. So it's one of those things where the East is getting deeper, and the West is as deep as it's ever been. I think there's so much parity on both conferences that not only is this going to make it one of the better NBA seasons of all time, I think in terms of competitiveness, everybody's going to be fighting, and I think nobody is guaranteed to just bring their same team and run it right back. And I think these teams have to understand if everybody stays healthy, teams are getting deeper. A lot more younger guys are being the leads in this league. It's not going to be easy. So it's going to be really interesting. I don't think, like I said, we talk about Philly as a team that, is hoping to contend deep in the playoffs next year, hopefully, as a team that, they have that upside to contend for the Eastern Conference final with, two of some of the best scorers in their respective positions in the league. Where does this leave a lot of other teams in the East at the top end where, there's like 5 or 6 teams that are in the mix, and It's only one spot that comes out, so it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun, but it's gonna be tough. But I think I'm super excited, and I think Tyrese Maxey, when you look at guards in the East, he ranks amongst one of the best. So yeah.
One final kind of point here about Tyrese Maxey. I love his touch around the rim. I think he does have a really good touch. He has the floater that he'll go to every now and then. Hold on, let me look at one quick thing with Maxey. But then, like you saw it, with some of those clips there, where he's just able to use the speed and get to the rim and finish. Like, he had a couple of plays we had to finish like super high up off the glass. He had the really weird, like, it's almost like, how Steph does the layup, the layups where he'll just like throw it. So yeah, like he almost had one where he had to angle it like that.
I think it was super.
Yeah.
We were showing the New York series where, again, he's doing that so well. I think he has good touch. I just want to be able to see him add a floater to his game or add a pull up in that mid range where he's able to just be so fast. And now I want to see if he's able to stop on a dime. And that's probably the next progression of him as a scorer, where can he find more ways to kind of manipulate defense? Because his speed is like,
it's insane.
Some of the best. It's some of the best in the league. Like, I look at a guy like De'Aaron Fox, like it's De'Aaron Fox, and then I look at a guy like Maxey as like some of the best, fastest guys in the league. So are you able to leverage that into any type of creation and initiating your offense? He does it so well getting to the rim, and he does it so well in terms of creating a shot from it on the perimeter. Is he able to kind of develop that in-between game more and, be able to kind of have something consistent like a floater or pull-up to go to? And obviously, if the playmaking does match that, then you just have one of the most dangerous players in the league, If he's able, we know how good of a scorer he can be. If he kind of can get that same level of impact as a playmaker, it literally, the sky's the limit for him.
So some quick data points here that I want to point out with Max, because it is fun to know, like, he still has another step that he could probably tap into as a scorer and obviously as a playmaker. 13.2% of his shot attempts were floaters, or runners, if you will. 13.2% of those. This is regular season and playoff shot, 43.5% on floaters / runners. Yeah. But this is on jumpers or shot distances as well. Short jumpers is 17 feet, 106 shot attempts, 15th percentile in points per shot attempt. Shot 32.1% from that range, right? Medium, which would be 17 feet to the 3-point line, so longer mid-range jumpers essentially. Took 72 attempts, 82nd percentile in points per shot attempt, 47.2%. But again, only taking 72 of those is a little frustrating. Long 3-point jumpers took 600. He took 633s last season, which is insane. Morey ball at his finest, which accounts for 78% of his jump shots last season were long threes, or just threes in general, right? 37% from three last season in general per synergy, regular season and playoffs, by the way. Mm-hmm. Well, last point, 43.6% on catch and shoot threes last season, only 32.8% on pull up threes. I think with Maxey, like you said, it's a combination like just trusting the in-between game a little bit more, mm-hmm. where, I mean, again, I'm all for shooting a bunch of threes. I am, right? I think being able to create for yourself from behind the arc and things like that, I think that's important, right? But for a guy like Maxey, and I wonder how much influence this does have, Morey and Nick Nurse. Nurse isn't, or at least hasn't really been a super threes over mid-range guy, especially you have Embiid on your team too. That doesn't seem like Nurse. Yeah. But can we give the defense a little bit more to kind of have to worry about, right? A great 3-point shooter, incredibly dynamic driver with his speed, but it's really, really fun to see that there are obvious steps that he can take as an offensive player. And he's only he's 23. Like I said, he's gonna be back on this list next year.
Hopefully at a higher position,
Yeah, he's entering year 5.
it's going to be scary what he's going to be doing this season. And I really think that, with this better improved team building with Morey and the 76ers, that he's going to be probably one of the biggest reasons as to why this team has a lot of success, arguably maybe more than Embiid, because again, we know what Embiid does, and obviously if he's able to stay healthy, he's going to be always in that contention for MVP. But I think the person that could actually swing this team the most, if not Embiid, I really does think it could be a guy like Maxey.
Embiid's health.
Exactly. I mean, if Embiid's health is one, I think Maxey's ability to take that leap as a lead guard and kind of do it consistently, but also setting the table, not just as a scorer, but as a playmaker. And I think Paul George, I think he's fully embraced being the backseat driver in this instance where, he knows that he's not a number one, probably not a number two.
He has a wheel in the car still, even though he's in the back seat.
Literally,
but he knows that the primary drivers of that car are Embiid and Maxey.
And I think it's one of those things where you look at a guy like Paul George, he's literally said it himself that he knows he's not a number one or not, he's pushing number two to number three territory. He knows that if he's able to kind of be on a lower usage, but also be still an effective two-way player, he'll be one of their better wing options that they've had in a very long time. So I'm actually excited to see what this team does.
Some would say since Jimmy Butler, right? Oh, wait, my bad.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. And you have to think they still retain a guy like Kelly Oubre. Obviously, they made their pieces so that they got for the summer. So, again, this team is going to be stacked in terms of complementary pieces that can score. So it's really just a matter of if a guy like Maxey can kind of just get everybody going and kind of, like you said, develop that in-between game, but also develop his ability to kind of set the table for others. So a lot to look forward to as a scorer. I probably do see maybe a slight dip in the scoring numbers, just given this team just getting stronger and, obviously Embiid potentially coming back, hopefully being healthy. That should probably affect his numbers a little bit, but I think he'll be more efficient with the three-point shooting and, like you said, the mid-range where pull-up, that is definitely something that's probably going to be a point of emphasis for him. So, yeah, I think that's something where he probably does have that improvement. Everywhere else, maybe just a little dip in the scoring numbers just naturally due to regression. So,
all right. What's up, Mr. Pop Gaming? Hope everything's all right with you, bro. I've been all right. And yeah, I think I expected to be Trey Roy. I didn't expect it to be Blake Kenton. All right, number 5. And wrapping up this part 3 of our series. Make sure you guys hit the like button if you guys are just not hopping in here. Great way to help out the show. Takes 2 seconds. Promise you hitting that like button's free. Number 5. I had him 2 spots below where you had him at, but we both had him consensusly in our top 7. And me having him like number 7 doesn't do it justice. It's very, I think, what was it, J-Dub scenario for you?
Yeah.
Where having him lower does not do justice for how much I love this guy as a player. I'm moving. Quick scene, look, peek behind the curtains. I'm moving in the next couple of weeks and like gonna rehab the whole studio setup or whatever. And I'm getting a Tyrese Halliburton jersey. So Laker fans for the Lakers channel, you guys are just gonna be pissed at me or whatever. Oh well, because Muhammad, one of the main comments I get is, by the way, I already spoiled it. Number 5 is Tyrese Halliburton. Number six. Sorry, yeah. I get a lot of crap for having the Palo jersey in my background that's framed and not the AD jersey, but that's because the Palo jersey signed. So, I mean, I think that's pretty logical. ZD says clearly number 6 is Killian Hayes.
Oh my gosh.
Number 6, Tyrese Halliburton. I mean, what a year. It's unfortunate that we're not going to be able to talk about him again next year. He's 24 now. 20 points a game, 3.9 rebounds, 10.9 assists, 1.2 steals, 0.7 blocks, shooting 47.7, 36.4, 85.5% from the line, 61.8% true shooting percentage. Now, there's a lot of takes going around. I'm going to briefly revisit the Hallie and Sabonis deal.
Yeah.
Okay, look. There could be a trade, in my opinion, that makes sense for both teams. That still like there is a clear-cut winner. Because I don't, and I actually hope you disagree with me. I'm curious what your thoughts on this is. I don't think there is an argument that like the Sabonis and Hallie trade is a win-win. Like it's a trade that makes sense for both teams. That both teams, to a certain extent, benefited from that trade. The Kings have had their 2 most successful years in God knows how long since adding Sabonis. The Sabonis has honestly only gotten better since he's been there. And the Pacers have just gone to an Eastern Conference Finals. Like those two things are not the same.
And I think so. You think that? So your point is that it is a win-win, but it's not respective to one another, or that it can be considered a win-win if both have gone on different successes. Is that what you're trying to say?
I think that the first point you were kind of making is more where I'm at. Like it's a win, sure. Like both teams benefited from, like they both mutually benefited, but like there's levels to it. Like I think the Pacers have their face of the franchise for the next decade, and the Kings have a really, really good player that complements their best player.
And I think it's one of those things where you've seen both teams build around said guys in that trade, but you could see one team building around that team as a cornerstone rather than kind of the other guy being kind of
a guy. Going back to like the A guy or the guy conversation. And again, like
that doesn't take
they
away
both benefited. Yeah, I love Sabonis. He's a really fun player. But again, there's just levels to it. That's kind of my point.
And again, I think I've seen that rhetoric be mentioned a lot with like trades where both teams won, but it's like to what level? You know, I think you have to make that caveat where literally in an I would say I'm gonna call this team a year two situation, because I think Indy got proper experience under their belt, and then this season was really the kind of what do we expect from this team? You know, are they able to push the pace high? Well, they were able to do that. One of the best and fastest pacing teams in the league, able to score so many points. Obviously, their initial run to the in-season tournament final was kind of the biggest prover of that, you know, this team can play really high, fast-paced offense, maybe no defense, but, you know, they might get 130 points licked on them, but they're going to put 140 up. And then obviously at midway through the season, you know, they lose a player on a team like Mathurin. They trade off of a guy in Buddy Hield. So now everyone thinks that, okay, is this team going to be able to have the second half season that, you know, that they replicated in the first half? And I think they continue to add pieces that made so much sense. Obviously, we've seen the ascension of a guy like Andrew Nembhard on that team, where they really found ways to kind of get everything to gel, surprisingly. And then obviously, they still have so many pieces on that team. You look at a guy like Jarace Walker, where, you know, as a top 10 pick the previous year, he has so much promise as a front court player. I think when you look at a guy like Johnny Furphy that they just selected this past season, great shooting wing for Kansas. I think he's going to be really good for the philosophy of that team under Rick Carlisle. But hey, they still have a guy like Benedict Mathurin kind of just in rotation. I think this team is going to be a mainstay in the East. And I think Tyrese Halliburton showcased how good of a player he is when he's healthy. And I think the shame was that, you know, he never really reached those levels post All-Star break with his hamstring injury.
Post the injury, yeah.
And I think
it's pretty clear he tried to rush coming back to like qualify for some of the awards, which is the biggest no-no with hamstring injuries. Like you have to let those kind of just develop it, not develop, rehab on its own and recover on its own. Like, I don't know why I couldn't think of the damn word recover. But it's pretty clear you tried to rush back from that. And there were spurts in like the playoffs where, okay, like, oh, this is what pre-injury Hallie looked like. But it just wasn't consistent. And I think you can still see there were moments where it bothered him. It really just kind of affected his juice. He's already a guy that like lacks juice to a certain extent in terms like speed or things like that, or be able to like get to the pull up and create enough separation to get to the pull up three and things like that, shoot it comfortably. Or he also doesn't get a ton of lift off the ground too. So like there's a lot of reasons to imagine why like a hamstring injury would affect a guy like Hallie. But I'm going to go out on a limb here and make some, if you want to call it bold takes, then I mean, sure. But in my opinion, I think these are pretty not objective, but I know that pretty objective takes. I think he is one of the four best playmakers in the league. I refuse to argue with anybody about that. I think he's in the first class of playmaker. And the thing that kind of separates him from at least two of the guys, or like the difference between like a him and a Trae and a Luka. And what makes him so impressive is he doesn't make like the batshit crazy impressive throw as often as like a Trae or a Luka does.
Yeah.
But the ability to like not turn the ball over is incredible. He's so insane with that. And yeah, any other thoughts about Hallie right quick?
I think the biggest point, going back on the playmaking, I wholeheartedly agree on him being one of the 4 better playmakers in the league. Because again, the Indiana Pacers are like one of easily the best assist to turnover ratio teams in the league, right? They have guys like him, Nembhard, TJ McConnell, Siakam. These are guys that are so comfortable on the ball, and I don't think any team in the league even sniffs the Pacers when it comes to sharing and protecting a rock. And again, Tyrese Halliburton being at the helm of that. I mean, for a guy that is literally your hub, he was so effective in terms of creating pull-up opportunities, in terms of creating jump shots as a three-point shooter. Also, his mid-range game, again, one of the best mid-range shooters in the entire league. And you could see that, he did it good on maybe lower volume, but that's probably what you want to see more in the next coming season, where he's just able to just get into driving lanes, passing lanes, and just kind of pull up so naturally. And I think off movement, he's been showing that he can be good from like 14 feet around that area to 20 feet. I think he is a really great pull-up shooter, and I think something that we don't give him credit for is his ability to be a great 3-level scorer. I think he needs to get more credit at that. But again, he is a player where he is so effective. I think he ranked 11th in EPM this past season. And that was given a year where majority of it he probably spent injured or was away. And I think one of the biggest injury concerns that he had that affected his game was the scoring. You could definitely see that he lost that step and that juice, it wasn't really there, but now it's definitely not there at post-injury, where, he really is not an above the rim athlete, but you could see the scoring being affected in terms of his hamstring injury. And like I said, I think him rushing was the worst thing that could have happened, because, we've seen people rush hamstring injuries and it's just been lingering forever, i.e. James Harden. I think that was one of the better examples where he was running literally, these are two guys that were running the league rampant, and I think they came back a lot sooner than they should have, and they still linger with the hamstring issues to this day. And I think that's something where this Indiana team genuinely cannot operate the exact same without a guy like Halliburton. We've seen spurts of it, when they did play against the Celtics, where they're able to go basically bar for bar with this team with Andrew Nembhard at the helm of it, but this team does not operate nearly the same in terms of pacing and just flow when Halliburton is not in the mix. And I think the biggest thing for this team is he has to stay healthy. But outside of that, this team has potential contending aspirations seriously in the East. I think when you look at them picking up Pascal Siakam in the season, that was one of the best pickups that you could have had. And you could really see it, at least in the first 2 series, where he basically was their lead offensive option with anything. And I think he showed you that he is a guy that could be a sub 20 point per game scorer or 30 point per game scorer consistently against some of the best teams. Obviously, they did go through a pathway where maybe they might have played injured teams, but I think the point stands that this team top to bottom is constructed very well. And I think this past season, they've shown you that through their commitments to a guy like Nembhard, where they see a vision with him long-term to pair alongside a guy like Halliburton, where I think this is going to be one of the better guard pairings in the entire league, and probably one of the most underrated ones. Surprisingly, I think people don't give Nembhard, who again is somebody else that's also on this list as well, 2 guys that are under 25 that are basically going to be, the drivers of this team's success in the backcourt. It's going to be so fun to watch how they just gel with one another. Again, both great playmakers, but again, they fit each other so well in terms of the on and off ball scoring and just being complementary pieces when they don't have the ball in their hands. I think this team is going to be so good next year. And I really do think that I would hope that Rick Carlisle does incorporate more of the younger guys in rotation. We did see a guy like Ben Shepherd as a rookie find himself be utilized in rotation a lot as a shooter and just kind of as an on-ball POA guy. But I think a guy like Jarace Walker would be somebody that would probably be very impactful for this team. Not just as a front court option, but kind of as a connector and a do-it-all guy. Again, watching him in the summer league, I think they were showing a lot of opportunity of him spacing the floor, shooting the ball, being able to put the ball down on the ground, play make, basically in the essence of like a Bam Adebayo light, where this team has so much talent and they have shooting pieces. Can they put it together and stay healthy? And I think if you do run that Celtics series back, I don't think it's as bad as it looks, given the score lines, because basically every game felt close. It was games that were coming down to the wire, and this is where you would have hoped that if Halliburton was a healthy, he would have definitely let his impact in these games. So I think this is a great pick for Halliburton. I think he's probably not going to be in this list next year because he's going to be 25. But again, a player that is going to be one of the best playmakers in the league, one of the most impactful players in the league, full stop, and somebody that's going to be probably one of the better drivers of their team being in serious championship contention talks for the future. So yeah, a lot to love with a guy like Halliburton. I trust in him in being, running it right back to where they were last year with this team.
So I just have to read off some numbers for you guys right quick, right? First off, these percentages that we have on this graphic do not do him justice. Like specifically that 36.4% 3-point percentage. If you look at the month of March, Tyrese Halliburton shot 27.3% from three. Post All-Star break, he shot 30.3% from three. This is primarily like post-injury for Hallie, obviously, right? Month of November, played 13 games, pretty healthy. Shot 53.2% from the field, 46.7% from three, averaged 28.6 points, 11.7 assists, only 2.5 turnovers. The following month of December, this is right around when the injury happened. I want to say the injury happened late December, if I recall correctly. December, 21.4 points on 47.5% shooting, 36.9% from three, averaged 14 damn assists, and 2.8 turnovers per game. He is, if we're just talking about, I'm trying to find like football's on my mind. So I'm trying to find like a good quarterback comparison of like, look, we are just like so in control and not turning the ball over and not giving the defense extra possessions and not the opposing team extra possessions. And that's why he is the best guy to run this type of system. Mm-hmm. Whereas, I mean, I love Trey, but I don't think the fit would exactly be there because Trey will have games where he has legit turnover problems, right? Now, maybe to a certain extent, like that caps Hallie's ceiling to a certain, like as that sounds weird, but like I think Trey is so aggressive to where like there's going to be plays where you're like, oh, what the hell? Similarly to like a Luka even, right? Where it's like, all right, why did we just make this dumb pass in the fourth quarter, like down 6 or whatever? Yeah. But then it raises the ceiling for more impressive pass. We're like, oh my God, there's only 2 other people on the planet that can make that type of pass. I'm not saying Hallie doesn't have that, but the consistency is way more with a guy like a Trey or a Luka. Yeah. Halliburton is just incredible. I think I might surprise some people where I have the Pacers ranked in my power ranking series. And it's because if Halliburton is healthy, yeah, I don't know if I trust him and I don't have him like in my contender tier or like we're pushing NBA Finals talks. Yeah, but I don't think they'll they're gonna back down against any team in the East. Yeah, where again that Boston matchup, like you said, run it back with a fully healthy, not the 70% Hallie that we saw from February on or whatever. Fully healthy.
Games. It'll be some different games. That's all I'm gonna say.
It's at least a back and forth 6-game series, and those back and forth 6-game series 9 times out of 10 can be back and forth 6 games the other way. Right? Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, I also think Indiana doesn't get enough credit because their first 2 series were also like the other team's best players were really, really banged up. Like Giannis didn't play at all. Dame played like a game and a half before he got hurt again. Yeah. New York was hurt the entire series. But I think that's like, again, overshadowing like how good Hallie was pre-injury, how good this team was at kind of figuring it out without Hallie. And now you're adding a legit top 20 player back into this team that is running the show better than just about anybody in the league. And we talked about table setting with with what was it, Maxey, and like how he can, you like to see him take that step. There's very few players that do a better job of just setting the table and making sure everybody eats better than Tyrese Haliburton.
100%. And I think going back to just the Luka and Tyrese point and the Trey point, I think something that we don't mention is that the turnovers, like even though he doesn't make those passes that he knows he can, he's efficient with that, which I don't think that's the same regard for those other two guys where they do gamble a lot in their play and their play passing type. But again,
I have a comparison. I finally have figured it out. My NFL comparison.
I'm trying to hear this.
Okay. Trae Young is Josh Allen, where there is not a single pass on God's green earth that Trae Young can't make. But you are going to get the occasional for Josh Allen. It was like week 1 last year against the Jets where he was awful. You're going to get the occasional. Why did we just have 6 turnovers in this game? Or like, why were we forcing passes that weren't there instead of taking the simple one more to the guy right next to you? Yeah. But generational playmakers, right? Tyrese Haliburton is Justin Herbert, where he can make every single pass imaginable. But does he on a consistent basis? No, but he's low turnover, does a great job at table setting and making sure everybody eats. But talent-wise, he can do every single thing. Now, like, with the basketball in his hands, that Trae Young can do.
100%.
It's just it just looks a little bit different. But
and also, I think it's because it's different that he doesn't get the same grace or respect to his peers like a Justin Herbert, to where, he is one of the better quarterbacks in the league, top 6, top 5, best QBs in the league. But it doesn't feel like he gets that same respect or grace given to him, given the injuries, given the team construction around him. I don't think Haliburton is the same guy that we should view him a year or two ago compared to now, where their team building is a lot more better, just all around him. But I think the most important thing is he has that talent to where he can make any throw, like you mentioned. And I think it's one of those things where he sets the table for everything. I think a healthy Justin Herbert is able to make any team better. The same I look at a Haliburton, where you're always going to contend with a guy like that at your helm. So I really do like that comparison, because I think not even just basketball related, but just perception-wise of both players, I think that's very true, that, a Haliburton and, a guy like Herbert, in that sense, where maybe they might not be viewed in their peers in the same respect, and how injuries can kind of derail their wing. But I don't think he's as injury prone to a Herbert, but I think that respect, this specific to this season, makes a lot of sense too. So I completely agree.
Like, to that point about like the respective peers and maybe even some of the media, if you tell somebody right now that Hallie is like a top 5 point guard, that's going to come with a lot of, I don't know, or nah, not, you got X, Y, Z. And I would have to like really do a point guard ranking, but like he's probably 5 for me, right? Yeah. Whereas same thing for Justin Herbert. You tell somebody that Justin Herbert's like the 5th or 6th best quarterback. I don't know. You got Tua. You got.
You're definitely going to be met with some faces, but it's like the tape does not lie. And again, the same way we give grace to certain players when we know if they're healthy, what they can do, we have to have that same respect for a guy like Herbert, and the same respect for Haliburton. I mean, when you look at guards in the league, I mean, we know how special the top end guys are, and I think Haliburton deserves to be in that respect, given what he's done with this team on a bum hamstring. I mean, if this guy is healthy next year, with again the squad that he has currently running it back, how do they not run it back?
And honestly, the biggest reason why I think I don't have the Pacers in my like tier 1 of teams in the East, there is a level of like, okay, can Hallie please stay healthy? Like, can we get a full year of Hallie being healthy? Can, Nembhard not completely repeat what he did in the playoffs, but like, can we get that for a full year? Like, what does that look like throughout the course of the season now that he's paid? But like, can this team be? And they buckled up. They were a lot better, I think. If my memory serves me correctly, they were a lot better defensively in the playoffs last season.
Yeah.
But like over the course of the regular season, can this be a top 20 defense? That's all I'm asking for. Historically speaking, you have to have like a top 12 defense to be able to win a title. Like dating back to 96, I think there's only been one other team ever to win a title that wasn't a top 12 defense. That would have been the 2001 Lakers, I think, which has like the most dominant player of all time on that team, and then Bean on that team. Right, like that's the caveat. I also think actually Denver was right outside that list, so they're like 14th, I think. That Lakers team was really bad defensively, but they buckled down in the playoffs too. So I'm just asking for the Pacers team to be top 20 defensively. That's what I only ask.
Yeah. I mean, this team I think they were the second worst PNR team in the playoffs last year behind the Celtics, which it doesn't feel like they're the worst, even though they play great collective team defense. It's just in PNR situations, they're just horrible. But yeah, like this team, Indiana, like they always said, is this team that can be number one in pacing and number one in speed? Can they be also a great team if their defense is not even top half of the league? So now this is where you got to start thinking, which one are they willing to concede, or do they understand they have to be better as a defensive unit? So I think they know their philosophy, and I think that's with Rick Carlisle. They know that if they do push the tempo and kind of just generate more shots than the other team, that they'll have more that go in. And again, analytics does play a very big role in the way we view hoops, and I think that's something that I've seen Carlisle definitely change his perception on, especially having gotten Luka at his early stages, moving on to Indiana, where he does have another exceptional playmaking-esque scoring guard that can really set the table for everybody else. It's going to be interesting to see if this team does repeat next year. Is their defense going to be where it should be, respective to their offense? Because I think this team is always going to be great offensively, given the nature of how good of a playmaker he is and the team around him. But if they really can lock in defensively, then we can see them hang with the best of them. And we've seen that in that Celtics series where, again, no Halliburton in the mix, no Benedict Mathurin. These guys went toe-to-toe with the Celtics for a majority of the game at times across the 4 games they played. So that's where I'm saying if this guy's healthy, this series looks so much more different. But again, you've seen what that team looked like against the eventual NBA champions, what they look like defensively when they're actually all locked in and playing as a unit. So it's going to be interesting to see if they come out the gate next year like they did last year with the in-season tournament run, where they were just smoking teams on the offensive end, but really no worry on the defensive end. And they were basically matched up with another defensive great team like the LA Lakers. So it's one of those things where if this team can kind of match up to the same caliber or somewhat defensively, it's going to be a scary team. But I think for the current moment, I wouldn't say that they're true championship contenders. But again, with the way that the East looks, it could be anybody's day. It could be anybody's series if it swings one way.
So this is just complete nonsense to me. I'm looking at some of the Vegas odds for this Pacers team right quick. Per FanDuel, the Pacers are tied for the 8th best odds to come out of the Eastern Conference. They're tied with the Heat, so technically 7th best odds.
What?
The teams that have better odds, the teams that have better odds to come out of the East, Boston at plus 155 makes sense. Then it's Philly and New York plus 440. Cool, makes sense. Then it's Milwaukee plus 700. Okay. Mm-hmm. I'm still with them, right? 5th, the Cleveland Cavaliers plus 1600.
Okay.
Next, the Orlando Magic plus 1700, and then the Miami Heat plus 2000. Then it's the Pacers plus 2000. Look, if you guys are betting people, that come on. I'm not 8.
That is crazy. I mean, did we not? Who did they lose?
Their win projection.
We have to.
Their win projection has to be low then. Like it has to be low 40s. If they're 8th to come out of the East,
it has to be like 45 or 6. It has to be 45 or 46 and a half.
That doesn't make sense. Their over-under projection is 47 and a half, which is fine. But why are they so low to come out of the East? Then?
How are you? Wait, so you expect them to basically get over/under 48 wins, but they're the 8th best team. I'm probably sure that Miami's win projections are much lower. Cleveland Cavaliers much lower.
Miami is 44 and a half. No, Cleveland's is higher somehow.
Wow.
Cleveland's is 48 and a half. Orlando's is 48 and a half.
What? Okay, that could be interesting. Hey, they're going to be doubted.
Milwaukee's 50. That makes sense. Who was the other team that was really bad? Oh yeah, it was Miami. And then Miami's being low is representative of the conference finals bet. That makes sense. But 47 and a half, having the 8th best odds makes no sense.
Do they not take into consideration that this team was not a fully healthy team with their initial 2 starters gone for a majority of the year in Benedict Mathurin and Halliburton? They come back healthy next year. They're the 8th best team to come out the East. How does that make any sense? That's going to be funny. Either Vegas knows something or they're just trying to get robbed. Point blank. I don't think there's any in between.
Yeah, like I don't think that they're gonna come out of the East, but
But
like
eighth
if we're just talking value bet, that's
plus 2,000.
that's
Hold
that's good
on,
value.
very good value. I
What'd you
mean,
say?
that's very great value. If they literally win the Eastern Conference last year, and you're thinking they're 6 spots lesser than that, um, be my guest. Be my guest. I mean, again, I'm not a betting man, but I'm just saying that is insane. Yeah, it's just less respect to that team. Which, if they do stay healthy, I think they're gonna prove too many people wrong. So it's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, hold on, I'm not doing this. But like, if you're a betting man and you had the money, you threw 100 at that, that's $2,000 if they make it. That's a or make it out. Like that's great value. I'm not doing that.
No, I value my money.
Want to make that clear.
Okay.
But quick recap of part 3 here. Number 10, J-Dub, Jalen Williams from the Oklahoma State Thunder. Number 9, Scotty Barnes from the Toronto Raptors. Number 8, Cade Cunningham from the Detroit Pistons. Number 7, Tyrese Maxey from the Sixers. And then number 6, Tyrese Halliburton from apparently the very disrespected Indiana Pacers. Part 4, the final part will drop. We'll do another one sometime next week, next weekend around this time again. This series has been a ton of fun. We'll brainstorm some other, maybe a list, like a defense list or whatever, like a tier maker or something along those lines to do, or something like that. After this list is done, I'll probably have Muhammad come back on for that Dallas episode when we get to the Mavs at number 17. I'm joking. And yeah, this has been a ton of fun. Muhammad, anything else before we kind of wrap up here, as Caleb Williams just threw a very bad interception?
Damn.
The Kamari Lassiter, hey, I like that guy.
He's going to be a really good talent. I'm going to like him at cornerback for Houston. I think this group was a really nice group to look at. I think this group, in theory, has the most promise or things to look forward to, per se, given respective to this season and what's to be in store for next season. I think when you look at guys like J-Dub, I think he has a whole nother ceiling that he could tap into if given the right situation. But again, he could be a guy that could genuinely ascend to one of the best number 2s in the league. Same thing with Scotty Barnes. I think he could ascend to being one of the best number 1 options, hopefully respective on his team. And you hope that if he does take that leap where he just came off of a career year, can he add that more and become a better scorer on the ball? And then obviously with a guy like Cade Cunningham, we obviously know his situation. It's just a matter of becoming more efficient. And now with the right, maybe not the right, but I'm bringing that using loosely. But if he's able to just improve from what he's had previous with, the acquisitions that he's gotten, and Hardaway and Beasley and Tobias Harris, now you're adding viable shooters on the court. Maybe he's able to actually make more of an impact as a playmaker, but also as a scorer with his pacing. So I think that's something to look forward to, but I don't really know what's to come with Detroit, but I think that Cade has some promise for next year. I think with a guy like Tyrese, that's going to be somebody that we know he just won the most improved player this year, even though he might not fit the criteria, but that just tells you that he's basically gone from being a rising star in this league to being a potential superstar in the making. And I think when you look at the Philadelphia 76ers, he's going to be a huge reason as to why this team is going to be something to be looked at, when they come to the playoffs next year. So he's going to be somebody serious next year to look out for. And as well as Tyrese Halliburton at number 6, where, this team had extreme success pre-All-Star break, made it as the first set of finalists in the in-season tournament, basically had this mantra that they're going to just push the pace and be the fastest paced team in the league. And it was successful. And I think when you have Halliburton in that mix, they're able to accomplish that and be one of the most scariest teams in the league offensively. But, obviously his departure and him not being fully healthy in the playoffs hurt their team. And you can really see where that team lacks in when he's not there or not healthy. So I think heading into this next season, if he's able to stay healthy, I think this team will be able to repeat it back and hopefully make a deep run in the playoffs at the helm of a guy like Tyrese Halliburton. And also with another name like Andrew Nembhard that's also mentioned on this list, another name like Pascal Siakam, maybe a Miles Turner. These are names that you hope around guys like Tyrese Halliburton are going to make better. So I'm excited to see what's to come for Indiana Pacers. But I think this next set of players from 5 to 1 are going to be some extremely serious players to look out for, not just for now, but I think for the future and the faces of the league. So really, really excited. This might be my favorite group up to come. So yeah.
All righty. Well, guys, thank you all so much for watching. Like I said, next episode drop next week. quick kind of housekeeping notes here. So like I said, I'll be moving here shortly. So again, the background stuff, I'll have a fresh new background stuff for you guys. And power rankings update. So number 21 dropped yesterday. Last night I had a late post. And number 20, actually backtrack. Number 20 through number 18 to like help speed up the series. Number 20, number 19, and number 18 will all be kind of combined into one jumbo packaged episode, where I will still like talk about all three teams. Will be a little bit more condensed so that I can not give you guys 3 hours of content in one video, but so we can still talk about those teams and get through those episodes and speed up the series. Want to make sure we are able to finish this series this year. And then around middle of the week, we'll get number 17 out for you guys. Then towards the end of the week, we'll have number 16 and maybe even number 15 as we count down to the start of the NBA season. Got some 2K content on the web this week. Get some film breakdowns back on the channel here soon as well. And yeah, so exciting times here as the season is about to get started. But my man, it's gonna be the Lakers in that package now. LOLs. I can confirm it's not the Lakers. Although I did drop the Lakers in my power rankings a little bit. I did lower them just a touch. So we shall see. Mohamed, thanks again as always, bro. This was a ton of fun, and can't wait for the rest of our content.
Likewise, man. Appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, sir. All right, guys. Till next time. See ya. Stay safe and peace out.